Welcome to Building the Mix. I know what it's about. I just didn't remember. I sent Josh a really long title for my last session, and it was just a mouthful, and it said what it needed to say, but it was just a mouthful. So I was like, I hope that this isn't some other long title too. So this is going to be really clinic-y. Wouldn't you grab that door? This is going to be really like a clinic, if we can. So Q&A, we're going to talk. I'm going to say things you disagree with. You might have opinions that I disagree with. Because there are good principles, but there's no silver bullet, right? There's no gear-driven solution that's going to change your life. There are just some thoughts, some principles, some ideas I'd like to share with you. And I figure, why not do it with the context of what we all experienced last night? If you were here, there was a great worship night last night. Got landed in the room, playing guitar, singing. So that's in there. So we'll solo that. It'll be great. It'll be all fun. Yeah. So I would just ask that if you do know any of the musicians, don't be like, hey, I went to a thing and we heard your vocal raw. Like that's obviously. But we're gonna go through last night's stems, using tools, only tools that you have on a digital console. So obviously with Logic, I'm using Logic because I couldn't get like the Avantis in here or whatever to mix. But using Logic, I'm only going to use channel EQ, basic compression. I'm not even going to use multiband compression because if you're mixing on X32 or M32, you don't have that unless you're doing waves, and that's the whole thing. So we're going to we're going to go principles, right? Principles, not you got to get this plugin and that's blah blah blah. Buy this thing on the internet and that's going to fix your. Tools are great, but we got to know how to use them. So it's all just different hammers in a bag. Last night's tracks, kind of messy, kind of split up. I've just added EQ compression to everything. They're all disabled except for I've set up some buses. I've also set up some VCAs. So we'll go through. We're gonna try to get somewhere. Maybe not to a final mix, but somewhere. Show of hands. Who is like primary audio tech where you're at? Cool. Who's one of the audio techs, or you have a team of audio techs or people underneath you? Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit of gear. Are we all on a digital console? Is anyone on an analog desk? Amen. 2021. Yeah. Come on. This is the part where I light a Alan Heath mix wizard on fire, right? Yeah. So I love that. But okay, cool. So you all have channel EQ, you all have compression, you all have, I would hope, a high-pass filter that spills over to the view of the channel EQ, because it's great when you can actually see it. You don't need it, because if you know numbers and you can use your ears, that's better. But it's helpful. What's that?
What are ears?
What are ears? Great starting point. Great starting point. If your console has a big screen and you look at it more than you look at your band, that's probably where you want to start. And change things. So we're going to talk about principles, using our ears, mixing with those instead of our eyes, a couple like quick and dirty tricks that I've found work for me. Everything I'm saying is contextual. It's worked in the context that I've mixed in. It's worked in the context that I've trained in. You might be in a room that is so live and loud that reverb isn't even part of the vocabulary unless it's talking about something you're trying to get rid of. In that case, you got to look into some treatment, and you're only going to want to add verb on your stream. You might be in a room that's so dry and dead that everything just sounds like you're in like a living room, and you just can't get it to sound like you're not in a living room and big. And so we'll talk about that as well. Who's using loops, tracks, clicks, all that in church? Last night, band was huge, right? It sounded awesome. Anyone guess which songs they were on and what songs they were not on? Anyone want to throw out an idea, I guess? Unless you played on the team?
I don't remember the set.
First and last. The only songs that used tracks last night were first and last. And the mix never sounded bigger or smaller. I mean, when they punched into that last song, it was also like someone had just talked, so we all felt really good, right? They were like, yeah, here we go, you know. But like first song, last song, and we can even look at that because I want to demystify that. Like we need a billion layers of tracks. You need musicians who know what they're doing, and you need to empower them because you, as a technician, there's no structure to this, by the way. It's harebrained, so ask questions as we go. You as a musician, as a technician, your team as technicians, you're also kind of therapists. Like you're also saying, yeah, no, that does sound good, or hey, you might want to take some time and work on that. You know? So let's solo that. This is Great Things. That's all it was. Honestly, probably didn't need it because Bruce on electric was killing it. How about Dan on bass? Yes. How about the feels, right? You could tell the sound tech is friends with the bass player because of how good it felt, right? All right. Who's been doing online church for a while and they missed 105 dBc, like just slamming, right? Not the best subs in the room, still had a good feel. So that was awesome. I love that. So let's go ahead and start on console layout. If you're not using DCAs or VCAs in your setting and scene, you're probably chasing a lot of faders, and you're probably going, okay, this is over here, that's over there. Oh, the drums, I've got them good, they're mixed, and if I pull them down with all my fingers at the same time, then I can keep that mix, just make it quieter. Or the band sounds great, but they're too loud, so I'm just gonna kind of use a DCA or a VCA. Your console most likely has a bank of 8. And it's probably in the output section. If you're on an X32, it's the first page of the output section. There's 8 of them. They're static. You can't move them around. If you're on like an SQ or a D-Live or some kind of more customizable platform, you can actually move VCAs and DCAs around. This is my recommendation for how to lay them out, not what you have to do. This is my recommendation. Drums, bass, keys, guitars, tracks, vocals, effects. And usually, if I can sneak it in there, what's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Yeah, so Logic doesn't let you double assign VCAs, like channels can't go to 2, but I usually, right before vocals, will have a band DCA or VCA. Because pastor gets up, and they've got a word, but we're about to go into another song, and we don't want to lose the mix we created. We just need to bring the overall energy of them down. And they're playing lower, and their side's thinking, but I still need to pull them back a little bit more. A band DCA allows you to keep the positions of all your faders, how you've set that mix, and just scoop them back down, put them back up. As long as you're really thinking, I'm going to keep this at 0 if I can, or I'm going to know where this lives, that way I can take it out, push it back in. I keep that right next to vocals, because like, all in all, like if you just need to make adjustments and get the vocal, you have it right there. When I'm mixing, I'm usually DCAs on one hand, and then try to page to wherever the lead vocal is over here. And honestly, if I can get them on the same page, the lead electric guitar. Because there's all these hooks, but you don't want it slamming in the verses, right? You don't want it slamming in the choruses, just the instrumentals. So that's how you do it, how you get it set up. But as a technician then, your job is to know the structure of the song, because if you don't know where the lead lines are, then you don't know when to push the guitar. Bruce, who played guitar last night and today, I love Bruce, and I love that anytime there's an open 4 bars, Bruce is ripping a lead line. We don't need loops. We had Bruce, you know? We had him in stereo. Great, awesome. But every time there was an open moment, he filled it up with something melodic, and it was tasty, and it wasn't always consistent. That's okay. It was real, it was raw, it was good. But it only worked because Nate, who was mixing last night, was pushing his fader whenever those moments happened. I was sitting next to him because I was watching these stems going, and we were just talking a little bit, and Nate was like, yeah, I'm just sitting on Bruce's fader the entire time. Like, aside from switching like who the lead vocal is in the mix, he's like, yeah, I'm just sitting on Bruce's fader, because like that's where the money is. That's where it's most important. I don't want that blaring in the chorus. I don't want that blaring in the verse. Guitar players aren't always the best with that volume pedal. They're not always the best at, yeah, I'm gonna go palm muted dotted eights here. They just might still be shredding the whole time. it's up to you to decide when we can hear them shredding. Especially the younger guys who like are figuring out how to solo. Like there's like, hey, I got some high schoolers in the band, and they just learned the scales. They're gonna tell you. They're gonna let you know they just learned the scales.
They're going up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or they got that one lead line down, and like, we get it. You can play "Smoke on the Water" or whatever it is. Collective groan. Thank you. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit here. I want to look at vocals first. Which you think when you do a sound check, what's the first thing you think you're gonna like hit? Kick drum, right? Usually, give me that kick. Let's start with drums. I like starting with vocals if I can. I like working on drums separately without anyone else in the room. I like getting the drummer in the room an hour early and just because that takes them, there's more mics on that than anything else. I like getting the drummer in the room an hour early. I like, before I add anything here, going up to the kit and listening to it with my ears and hearing what it sounds like before I shove a mic inside the kick drum and everything. And then when I'm listening to the kick in the room, I like figuring out where the position, if I push the mic in and I move it around, I like figuring out where that sweet spot sonically is before I just jump in and like plugins, effects, right? So you want to understand the instrument, understand what it sounds like. But say you got an hour with your drummer and that's done. Now you're doing a line check, sound check with everybody. Start with vocals, because what that's going to give you is a sonic baseline of the most important thing in your mix. This is not a rock show. It might sound like friendly rock music, but it's ultimately it's an opportunity for people to worship corporately. So corporate worship means we know what we're singing. That's why we have words on an enormous screen. So we all know what to sing. The most important piece of your mix is your vocal, because that vocal is telling us all what to sing. It's also the most organic element of your mix, which means the most can go wrong with it, because a vocalist is going to give you 60% in sound check and 100% when they see their friends in the front row. Yeah. How do you combat this? Well, you can only combat it so much. Compression is one way, but another way is conversation, is talking to your vocalist. Hey, if you show up and give me 100% in sound check, if you do warm-ups in the car on the way here, if you wake up half an hour earlier, then the result that I can give you in your ears and in the room, and if you add on that in your ears, because now it's important to me, right? In your ears and in the room, then we can get to a place that help me help you, So let's start with vocals. Let's find a good spot here. We'll do it again. Clayton's great. For your promise is yes and so they're on, they're not engaged. You will do good. I'm gonna see if I can get more headroom at this. Well, the fact that one's behind a TV is probably not helping us. Let's do that. And if we can do that, I'm gonna be kind of mixing next to behind it, so sound will change. And these aren't really designed for big room, whatever, but up to 1 and sorry, again, the guy before me, it just took us some time. Tim's great. If you didn't get in his session, he's doing one about implementing an MD. You definitely should, or get your worship leader there, because it'll take a lot of stress off you, because if you don't have an MD, the sound tech usually becomes like I think you guys were all not on the same page in that part. Let the MD do that, and they can do it from an instrument too. So,
great things, oh God, God, you do great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquer the grave. You free every captive and break every chain, oh God. You have done great things.
EQ before compression is my preference, but before we even EQ, hit the high pass, because that's if you don't have an EQ but you have a high pass, you can still get what you want out of your mic. Your vocal mics are eating the sonic range, even if they have a drop off built into them. We hear 18 to 18. As we get older, it gets smaller. They say we hear 20 to 20, but we hear 18 to 18. Your vocal mic is hearing everything below 70. Your lowest male vocalist isn't doing anything below 70. And we're talking hertz. So first things first, on the Behringer, it's someone's doing scale, sweet. In the Behringer, it's high pass filter, HPF. It's usually not built into the EQ. It's usually built into the input section of the channel where the preamp is. For some reason, that's just how it always has been. On old analog consoles, it was a button. It was a fixed frequency, 70 or 80 hertz. You'd hit the button and it would just meant you had a vocal mic. So start there. So I'm going to do it built into the EQ because I don't have a second plug-in slot to do so. That's going to show you in this spectrum. But I'll scoop it. I usually, there's a lot of different schools of thought. I like 74. Lee Fields from MXU says 74 for male. I like that. If you start to hear the high pass, you've gone way too far, right? But it's not, you're not doing anything in order to hear better in the signal. You're doing something in order to eat less sound you don't need coming through that channel. Because your vocal mics, whether you know it or not, your vocal mics are also drum mics. They're also whatever else is on stage mics. They're also room mics. So you want to try to find, okay, what is my vocalist doing? So
we dance in your freedom.
If it's a Shure 58, I usually look around 300, especially if they're really eating it. 300 is usually where that boxy closeness is.
Hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah.
Oh, I'm gonna leave this channel. Hey, look at that. I already did it. I knew it was gonna happen. I already did it. I did the thing that we all do. That compressor sounds great, man, but it's not engaged.
Yep.
Nice.
I've never done that.
Wow. You're like, why did I come to this? 74, cool.
Hallelujah.
All that closeness. I worked with a speaker for many years. Gets the mic, puts it right here. Hey, how we doing? Scoop 300, because that's all it is. It's right there. Held it wrong, held it close, right? If your vocalists are doing this with a 58 or worse, a hypercardioid, it's up to you to tell them this is how the microphone works. And it's up to you to say, you'll look really cool with a straight stand. Because then they can't do this, right? No one's going to put a straight stand in front of them and like, hey man, look really cool with a straight stand. We'll call Landon, see where he gets his hats. And like, you're there on the look. Hide it in the aesthetic, but you're really just trying to get them,
He's
like,
preaching to my soul.
you know what I mean? Right? Okay? That's going to help you get a better sound. And then they're going to be like, wow, I sounded better. Yeah, no, because you finally listened to me. You stopped holding it like Slim Shady and we got somewhere. So... but you can't just say don't do that. You need to explain, this is how this thing works. It's like driving with the park brake on. Just like, I'm telling you, why it's bad. So I'll scoop a little bit, not a ton. I used to push 2K. I used to think, oh yeah, I want... And I realized that I was pushing the nose a lot. So I also really like taking things tight, finding what I want, and then widening the Q. So on a parametric EQ, if you don't know, the Q is how wide it is. Obviously the frequency hertz is what we're at, and then the gain is adding or pulling. If you have a good room that doesn't have a lot of feedback, you can get a little creative and find it live. Otherwise, solo it in your ears, listen. Headphones in front of house, not cheapos, whatever. A good pair of headphones in front of house. $100, like Sony MDR V6, that's the moneymaker. Or something by Sennheiser, something that feels good, is comfortable, but you can solo a channel and listen to it to find that offensive frequency or what you want more of before you push it in the house. Totally cool to do that. So I used to do a little 2K bump, then I realized that was actually more offensive than helpful. It just gave me clarity. So I wanted that clarity somewhere else. Again, if you have it, if you can do it, if you can add the air back in, take it up around 8 or 10K. This is going to open you up to a ton of feedback if your PA is not calibrated properly. So you got to be careful. But somewhere in there, probably a little thin. Probably back this off a little bit. And again, these are 5-inch speakers, so there's no sub. Take it back. Trying to find a spot. Scooped out all the mess, added some clarity, gave me some push. Nothing crazy. Nothing wild. There's nothing in this that's like, you don't see these mountains and valleys. You might get that with a kick drum. That's usually where you're gonna find that you have to do that. Also, the last thing I did was add. When you're EQing, you're thinking subtractively. Because it's not really what do I need more of, it's what do I need less of. Do you have anyone that like mixes their own Aviom or P16 and they're like, I need more of me, but I'm out of room. And you're like, well, yeah, I'll get less of everything else. Might give you more of you, right? You have that like, oh, I'm not loud, I'm up at 10. Yeah, everything else is up at 10. That's why you're, think about frequency the same way. Think about frequency, where's my Dave Ramsey people? Think about frequency the way you think about budget. You only have so much sonic space in your mix. Yeah. What goes where? Where do you spend what? Yeah, the air is clarity, that's money. I want that cymbal to sound amazing and crispy, but not more important than the vocalist. So make sure that you start there. That's where you start to spend your money in the vocals, and then we work out. So I'm gonna, just for the sake of time, because we are starting to run late, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do to Clayton, and I'm gonna copy it over to Leah and to Landon. So we have EQ, we're happy. Let's look at compression. Totally not engaged right now. I will start with a 3-to-1, because that I feel is a good place to begin. That's saying that it's a 3-to-1 ratio. It's going to push back at that ratio. Quick, let's go history. Compressors made for radio, made for broadcast, made for people who had a billion channels and couldn't chase volume faders all day long. They needed a way to put some kind of cap on things, but not do it in a limiter that just chops off the top of the signal, right? I always describe a compressor as like a rubber ceiling. So think about like you're hitting it with a broom or something, and so the threshold is deciding how low that ceiling is to the ground, and the ratio is deciding how flexible the rubber is, how hard it's gonna push back. 3-to-1, very light. You can go all the way up to 10-to-1. There's different schools of thoughts on how to compress vocals. This is mine, but learn, keep researching, keep learning. I start with a 3-to-1. I get them singing. Hey, sing the chorus. Give me 100%. I want to find out where the transients are, especially if they're not a well-trained vocalist. Oh, freedom, they might give you some punches and jabs, and you need to find where those jabs are. If you over-compress a vocalist, it's going to translate to their in-ears, and then they're gonna sing more, and then the compression's gonna engage more, and they're gonna sing more, and you get into this feedback loop, and you're actually gonna probably lead to them damaging their voice. So it's a delicate thing. You wanna work with them, and you might wanna even say, the reason why I'm asking you to give 100% is because I'm trying to get set up in a way that allows for you to do what you do without leading to vocal damage, right? Once you like that, you can't really recover from that after, unless it's like a week or two of vocal rest, things like that. So let's find the threshold.
Jesus, I save you, your name lifted high, oh God. You have done great things.
I wish I had these are all, you're not gonna have a compressor like this. I wish I had a compressor. Most are gonna have a slant on them, and the threshold is actually going to be like the top of that ceiling, and then the ratio is going to decide how curvy that is. Okay. I like a compressor that it's just bumping it. It's bumping it. It's bumping it on the transients. It might not even touch it on the verse. Maybe it is, but something. If you over compress them, you need to make up the gain. You need to get, if you're going to do that to them, which you might need to because they might be all over the place. If you're going to over compress them.
Hallelujah, God.
That's fine. You got to give it back to him. That's what the makeup gain is for. And you don't want to push your fader all the way to the top and not have any control. So if you're going to do that, in the console sections, it's usually going to say makeup or gain. It's at the end of the compression, not the channel gain. I usually look at, this is where I will use my eyes first. I'll look at how much the compressor's cutting at a peak, at a transient, and I'll say, okay, cool, I want to make up at least 2/3 of that. So he's touching 12, negative 12, right?
Unshakable.
If I turn it off, so it's a studio. Okay, so some of this principle might break down because I'm using Logic, but in a console, in a room, you're gonna feel like this got louder. You're actually gonna feel that go away. So I would make it up at around 10 or 12. Now, obviously,
I've done great things.
It's killing me on the output.
Yes, you have.
So I can't go that far.
hallelujah.
But you want to make it up at least 2/3 of what you're cutting to them. So I'll push the threshold up a little bit more.
God, above it all, hallelujah, God.
Did you hear when he said above it all, the compressor really engaged? If I didn't cut 300 and I didn't have the high pass filter on and the EQ is not before the compressor, that would have been a lot harder and it would have pushed the compressor in more and it didn't need it. So that's why we're EQing. That's why we're chopping off the mess beforehand.
Unshakable, hallelujah.
Okay, cool. I'm happy. I'm gonna turn these off. Leah, no. Landon, no. And Landon, no. Copy these over. Female vocals, you can high pass a little higher up because female vocals aren't going to get as deep.
Have done
Where would you normally?
great things.
It really depends. It really depends on where they're singing. Yeah, if your console has an analyzer over top of the EQ, use it. Absolutely. Use it in sound check when it's just that person, because then you're going to see where they really start to speak.
You don't.
Don't go above 120 for sure. You know what I mean? And if you at all start to hear it sound like an old Victrola, like you've gone way too far.
Great things, say, oh yeah.
And again, the numbers are sub-important to what it sounds like. So if I say 120 to you and you get there and doesn't get you a result that like 100, like use your ears. There are principles at work, but they're not laws, right? There's laws of physics in sound, microphone placement, things like that. But like the way that we mess with it, interpret it, very subjective. This is again what works for me, what's in the context that I used to.
Hero of heaven, you
I'll scoop her
conquer
in.
the grave, and you free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, oh you have done great things.
We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus.
Leah would kill me. I mean it. I mean it. This is not like a ha 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 moment. Like I'm trying to show you she's not the lead singer here. And really, honestly, if she had just been standing there, it would not have been as engaging. So when she got to her song, she had breath and support, and she was good. In this moment, Clayton's leading because he's the most important thing, and she's supporting. She also was here. What a beautiful name. She's here, so she was here. Everything I'm doing, I can't really use as a basis until we get to her song. Okay? So after that, before I bring the rest of the band in, and we are starting to really slip on time here, I'll actually do effects on vocals too before the rest of the band. So simple verb, simple delay. You should have that on your console. In your effects DCA, don't control the return of the effects. DCA control the sends of the effects. Because if you're in a room, you want to speak into that room and let the reverb do its thing. You don't want to speak into a room and then suddenly like suck the air out of it, right? And a lot of people do that. If they need to pull effects really quick, they'll just pull it and then suddenly it's like this big, beautiful, right? Let the reverb do its thing and just fizzle out beautifully. And so by the way to do that, in your effects VCA, when I'm pulling this, I'm not controlling the reverb return and delay return. I'm controlling the reverb send and the delayed send, and I'm letting those things do what they're doing. So I'll open, I'll unsolo her, I'll unmute them. I'll open up effects as well.
You have done great things. Oh God, you do great things. Yes, Lord, you do great things.
So if I would have just pulled the return, you wouldn't have heard all that, whatever. If you have a plate verb on your console, start there. And if you have a console that's a digital console that has presets, no shame. Start with your presets. They hired some guy to make that, or some girl to make that. They hired some professional, hopefully, to make. If it usually it has like the name on it, then you really know. But they hired somebody. If there's a preset that says vocal plate, start there. Start there. If there's a vocal delay, big room vocal delay, usually things to avoid are like hall or medium or small or sounds like a shower. You want big space. And then to control it on the return, you want to control it by giving it some scoop on the high and the low. You don't want the verb to be bigger than the vocal. You don't want to hear the effect more than you hear the source. You want the effect to, it's like pancakes are good, syrup is great, butter's awesome, right? You don't want just butter and syrup though, that's disgusting. You need pancakes. Start with vocals, add the rest of it. If you ever like added too much butter and syrup and then you're sick, don't do that to your mix. I mean, it's the same, right? There, I got my pancake analogy in. I really love pancakes. If you came to my last break, I talked about breakfast. So I just pulled it, and you heard the verb still go. If I would have had the effects, here, I'll show you. I'll keep effects up. I'm going to kill the delays. So that's if you DCA control the return of the effect.
I've done great things.
It's just like pastor comes up and he's gonna talk and now it's just like we're in a different zone. It's weird, right? Because you need to pull the effects for talking. But if we're doing it on the return, or sorry, the send, not the return.
Yes, you have.
Just let it do its thing.
Hallelujah.
Extra points if you take the return of your vocal delay, route it back into the send of your verb. Those vocal delays are these dry little bits, right? Yeah, whatever. And they're gonna sound, if they sound as big as the vocal, you've gone too far. Crush the highs out, crush the lows out, scoop it, make it sound more muffled and through like a old megaphone, whatever. Push that through your verb. Now the repeats are also gonna have a little bit of that butter syrup goodness, and it's just all this nice shimmery thing that makes it sound big. If your room already sounds like that, don't do any of this on the main mix. Add it to your stream, sure, or mic your room up, I guess, but don't do any of that. Like, and again, if someone comes back and says, wow, it sounded like that. I was in college and I just like really gotten into vocal effects, and I mixed in this lobby, all hard surfaces, glass windows, triple tall ceilings. I mean, it was just the worst room to mix in, and I was like, effects. Afterwards, the worship leader's mom came to me and was like, yeah, it just like sounded like they were just like in this like huge, like so far away, like all these words. She was trying to be nice and make it sound cool. All words that did not describe an engaging experience. Don't put your drums or your vocals in another space. Just enhance the space you have. I think we talked about vocals enough. I hope less delay than verb. Let's go into some keys next. Here's what you do to keys. You pull some 2K. That's it. That's all I'm doing. Those keys patches are sampled and they're great and they're awesome. Pull 2K. If your player plays like this, and a lot of church key players do, add a ton of compression. Everglow by Coldplay, you know the song? Ba-da-na-na-na-na. Those keys are like so squashed down. They're just in this like, dynamically, it's like big and small, but it's just in this space. Do that to your keys. Squash them way down, gain them back up to where they need to be, and say, okay, this is your dynamic range, because a piano is the entire spectrum, and you might have a leader who's like, oh, it was really soft in altar call, and they're like, great things, you know what I mean? Like, Clayton wasn't that guy, right? But if they do get like that, compress the snot out of them. The reason I'm cutting 2K and maybe a little bit of 8 or 10, I'm carving space for the vocal. That's it. I'm just carving space for the vocal. I'm not doing it because like that's the magic number. I'm doing it because that's where I feel like I'm losing clarity. For you, it might be 4K. For you, it might be 3 or something. Wherever you feel like you're fighting and they're fighting for space, you don't just have to pull volume, do it with EQ. Carve out space. So I already used my budget on my vocal. I need to pay it back in keys.
God above it all, hallelujah.
If you want, we can solo these.
God, unshakable, hallelujah.
He's super, I mean, there's probably compression in his rig too, so he's super chill. I mean, he's great. He doesn't, a lot of keyboard leaders, they play the way they sing, so they can't do both. You know, Clayton's a professional, obviously. He does a great job with it. I don't need to compress this. I'm also assuming that whatever his rig is doing a lot of that. If you have a keys player using Mainstage or Ableton or something with software, go talk to them about their rig. Because if they're already compressing, you don't need to. If they're already adding verb, you don't need to find out what they're doing. Same thing with the guitar players, bassists. If you want to be fast friends with the guitar player, just ask, oh, hey, what's your newest pedal? And then they'll talk to you for 2 hours. It's great. But you'll also find out, hey, bass player, are you compressing on your end? And if you are, can you open it up a little bit or close it down a little bit? Because like I don't want to fight you. We're working together. I want to hear the source first. So super easy. I would add compression to that if I needed to, but he's playing great.
The world to great things, oh God.
Those drums sound good. They don't sound great, but they sound good. Anyone notice anything about the drum channel strip right now? We're not doing anything to it. They're good drums. Good drums are going to be better. They're good drums, and secret here, they're kind of crappy mics. They're like Shure's like Fisher-Price line of microphone. It's the Shure PG, and I'm not dogging it. That's what their budget allowed. But they spent their money on the instrument. They spent their money on the heads and maintaining the heads and making sure they're tuned. And for this conference, they spent some money, I'm assuming, maybe not, on the player. There's a good player behind that kit who knows what he's doing. All of those things, I don't have anything going on. Nate had a little bit on the kit because working on the house subs and figuring that out. And some other stuff going on, but not a ton. It wasn't messy. Compress them, obviously, because the transients and all that. But that's a good sounding drum kit. Let's dive in. In your room, if your PA is not calibrated well or tuned well, probably a good idea just to start with where is your sub hurting, and then engage or disengage with those frequencies. You can do that by running a sweep and watching it, a sine tone, or literally playing pink noise, which is every frequency, and then taking that and just saying, I'm going to boost a part of the EQ and I'm going to move around and I'm going to find out, when I've mixed in a room for years, when I hit 80 hertz, the whole room shook at 80 hertz. Rattled. I always pulled 80 hertz out of everything because like rattling is good, but like it hurt when it was like the room was hurting. So, I've got, I don't think I can show you, but I've got a photo on my phone, and I know how to send a photo to my computer. I'm just saying with the time we have. I've got a photo of some of the drum EQ, so I'm going to try to recreate a little bit of what we had last night. So, we're on kick. Yes. Is it engaged? No. I start around 100. That's going to give you that guh, you know? That thud, that but immediately above it, adding a scoop. So, and I'll hold on. Let's make the scoop this one. This is a dangerous game to get into. Is starting not with the lowest band, and then you're high, you're all over the place, and it's like So start with 100. Let's take it up. Can I change that? Oh no, I can't. Okay, we're starting with this one then. 100. Next guy, squeeze it super tight, take it down, because I don't want everything right above it. I really just want that guh. And if you're like, oh, what are we taking out? Let's hear. The boxiness. We're taking out the boxiness. We're getting the beater. If these weren't 5-inch speakers, we'd feel like it's moving your pants leg, right? You know, you're feeling it in your chest, right? And then there's still something else missing from the kick, and that's the so there's like the goosh, big whatever, guh, and the t and the k. You might.
Is that
yes, those are real technical. I said a friend of mine is using a digital drums, and they have 2 channels out, and he said, how do I get the most out of this? I said, Send all your boom out of this one and your ka out of this one. But you knew what I was saying, right? Boom and ka, right? All your lows, all your highs. So same thing, because that gives your sound tech more control. So around 100, I want to say, is where we're going to find that. Sorry, not 100. Maybe around 10. Let's find it. Let's find it together. Wow. Any questions while we're doing this? Any what do we? Nothing? I don't know if we're going to find it on this because of these speakers aren't. There was no kick in. Okay, so PG microphones, this is where the breakdown is. I'm not getting any clarity. I'm pushing it, I'm not hearing it. I'm analyzing pre as well, so this is actually what you're seeing is the raw microphone data, not what I'm doing to it. Yeah, that's great. So, not... it's in there a little bit. It sounds a little waffly. Again, PG mics, if you can, double mic your kick. Dynamic outside to get a boom. A condenser inside on some kind of padding or someone's hoodie that you stole. That's going to get that beater sound. If not, invest in a good kick mic. That's probably if you want to have, you can mic a whole drum kit with vocal mics, really, but the kick mic, put some money into that. So Sennheiser makes a great kick mic. Audix says they're like the church kick mic. I'm not a huge fan. Shure makes a good combo. Audio-Technica makes one that's 2 mics in one, so it actually has a 6-pin out, breaks out to 2 XLR cables. It's a dynamic and a condenser. Condenser pointed right at that beater, so you're getting that ka off the beater, all the boom, the energy, the air coming out of the hole. Cool, great. Gonna compress it. Hey, I'm gonna cheat for a second, and I'm gonna go right to drums, and I'm gonna say rock kick. And I'm doing this because you have presets on your board. Start there, and then break it down and say, what are they doing? I'm also doing that because we have time. Funny. Drum compressors should be fast. They should open right back up because a drum isn't going boom, it's going boom. It should open right back up. Good drum, thank you, yeah. Make it up if you need it. They have this ratio 4-to-1. I might do a little bit more depending on how inconsistent that player is. Andrew is like a machine, right? But you're like high school kid who's like still learning. Give him help him out a little bit. Give him some slack. Give him lower space, like we talked about with the piano. Make it all back up. That way he can misfire, he can off hit, and you're putting him in a good zone. Consistency, volume. I mean, it's really engaging, right? Cool. Let's listen to snare, top. Same kind of thing, find that, he's on a tom groove, so that's not gonna help. Find that thud to it. I love 80s drums, snare should have low end, but this is where you can start to use your high pass too. Pull, again, no magic numbers, just start to pull where you feel like you don't want more low end. I'm really doing something drastic here, and I'm not really mirroring what Nate did last night, so I want to take a look. Okay, so he had a little bump right above 100, and you can actually, using my analyzer, in pre, that transient hit right there, that's the stick hitting the head, and that's the wood and the feel and the bottom end and the resonance. I still want the clarity though, so let's find out where that is. Not a lot. Nothing major's happening here. Again, the drums are tuned really, really, really well. So nothing major there. And I'm gonna jump in and EQ. And again, we're gonna cheat a little bit because we're running out of time. You have these presets, not these presets, but you have presets for your board. You probably have a snare top, bottom, kick, overheads, and toms. So use them. But obviously, like, this wasn't designed with this drum in mind and this player in mind. So looking at this and looking at what it's doing and hearing that pullback, I think the threshold is probably a little low on this. I don't want it doing as much. I just want enough to not offend grandma. Don't offend grandma. Grandma pays the bills. That's not like me being cynical. Like, obviously, you want an experience that's engaging for your tithers, all your congregants. You're trying to make it sound good. Loud doesn't mean good. We like loud, I like loud, but you're mixing to your context. Andrew's not giving me any problems to solve. That kind of stinks. Because that, like, seriously, I'm like here, like, okay, cool, great. Yeah. That stinks. I'm gonna copy over compression EQ. But I want to show you in the snare bottom, if you do double mic your snare, the snare bottom isn't like another, like just a double of the snare. You can actually run into a lot of phasing issues if you don't know what you're doing with it. But the snare bottom's where you're going to get the crispiness. Because it's a snare drum, on the bottom of it are snares. So that's where you're going to get that clarity, that thing that makes it like that warm, that zhuzhy kind of, so knowing what you're trying to get out of it is helpful. And then mixing it down. Don't need a ton of it, right? I know some guys who just make the bottom, and I don't think it's a great way to go. Guys, I'm not going to touch the toms because we don't have time. But my concept on toms is think the same as the way you think about your kick, but just start moving, scaling up. And actually, if you start at tom 1 and you work your way down, by the time you get to the low tom, you're probably going to get it sounding better than your kick drum, and then you have a problem, because now the tom fills feel better than the kick. Start kick, snare, hats, whatever, and then work your way up, because that low tom needs to be on par or just above your kick, because that kick needs to be what's driving. This is how much you're pushing into your sub. If you run aux subs, managing that. That's where you have to use your ears because there's no measurement tool on screen for that. Start to mix in and dive in. Tom 2, Tom 1, don't push them into the subs, I would say, at all. Maybe 2 a little bit, depending on what you're going for. But mix up. That way you're building the kit from the bass, which is the kick and snare. What you've noticed, though, while I've been doing, and this was not an accident, was I didn't turn off the overheads. Your overheads are not cymbal mics. Your overheads are not cymbal mics. If they're labeled cymbal mics, don't change the label. Your overheads are a picture of your drum kit. When the drum kit was invented, no one said, yeah, you know what we're going to do? We're going to all shove our ears right up against each one of these, and then someone else is going to shove their ears right up against each one of the cymbals. Drum kits were invented and played in rooms and band shells, and they weren't mic'd, and if they were, it was Glyn Johns who invented the first mic technique, which was one over top of the kit, one over top of the low tom, both equidistant from the kick or snare to prevent any kind of phasing, and that got a picture, because that's 2 ears, right? We have 2 ears, we're designed that way, so that gave a good picture. Recorder man technique, added a close mic on the snare and a close mic on the kick. We evolved. Companies found more ways to make money selling mics, and now we're miking every instrument, sometimes including the hats, and some people are putting a mic on every cymbal. A stereo picture, 2 mics above your kit, high, not close to one specific cymbal, high up, panned wide, and both with a tape measure, equidistant from the loudest piece of the kit. Typically going to be your snare, might be the beater of your kick. That's going to prevent them from going in and out of phase. That, as well as the tuning of the snare, is something that your drummer should be checking every time they sit down at the kit, every Sunday. That's why you get them there early. You have a tape measure, you have moon gel, you have gaff tape, you have extra sticks, all there at the kit. You don't want to slow down the sound check. You have if you're doing the rims or the big fat snare head, whatever their accessories are, you have them all handy. So you can say, I'm getting a little bit of ring on the low tom and I don't want to EQ it out. Can we fix it at the source? put some moon gel on it, throw some gaff tape on it. Or the overheads are sounding a little weird, I'm getting a little bit of combing, I don't love the way they sound. Can you take a tape, can you measure them? Can you just play? Can you mute everything else but the overheads? And if you mute everything else but the overheads, how does your kit sound? If it sounds good, then the rest of it goes in. So if it's just cymbals, you gotta get them further away, and you gotta make sure they're not just over the front, but over the kit. Every track you listen to music anywhere, there's room mics in the studios. They're literally just putting extra ears around in the studio, and they're doing weird stuff to it. The reason being is drum makes sound here, but sound happens in waves, so that sound needs to develop more and more. That snare drum, it's not designed, again, to be like, okay, that's a great snare drum. It's designed to be like, I'm playing it and you're there listening. So those overheads are giving space for those waves to develop, for the harmonics to develop. I mean, I can't like even show you examples of it, but just it's giving space for that sound to do its thing. That's why cages are like great and bad, right? Because cages can make it sound like you're in a fish tank. That's when you start to add snare verb. That's when you start to add tom, overhead verb, compression on the hi-hat, or compression on the overheads, compressing them a ton, bringing them back in, double patching the overheads to another pair of channels, leaving one uncompressed, compressing the snot out of the other, and allowing them to run in parallel, giving you a really tight squeeze and a really open, airy sound that combines together really well. These are advanced tools I'm not going to get into, but just there are studio techniques that with a digital console you can bring in. And if you aren't going to go to the Mixing for Live Stream breakout session, you absolutely should. Landon and his team are going to kill it. Did that already happen?
No.
Oh, good.
It's
next.
And we will be going over.
And you're going over parallel.
Everything that you just said.
Wonderful, great. I won't get into it. This is like living and dying on a Sunday. So, bass. I'm not touching overheads because they sound really good. Because the kit sounds really good. I'm opening up everything else. Something solo is keeping me.
We dance in your freedom. Oh.
I'm going into bass. I'm actually scooping a little bit out because even when he hits that low E or D, if you're in a 5-string, it's not rumbling that low. And then I'll probably try to find the most offensive part of the kick drum, scoop it out on the bass. They'll get into side chaining, maybe, I hope, maybe not. You can point the compressor of one instrument at the signal of another and allow space. Like it's like as if you were like mixing like this every time they hit the kick. You can do things like that in your console. Usually though, I'm just creating some space vocally. If you are miking your hi-hat, scoop the vocal EQ, what you need out of the hi-hat mic, because they're always riding hats in the verses, so they're always fighting the mumbly part of the song that's sung low. It's just a mess. Get one out of there. Electric guitars, I don't touch them. I really don't. I compress if I need to, if they're all over the place, but I ride it with my hand. And maybe I'll scoop out some of that 2K, maybe some of that top end. These guys, anyone here play electric? Like they put a lot of their money and their time into getting their tone sounding the way it is, right? You'll do better moving the mic around on the amp and talking with them about how they feel about it. Feel is important. Yeah. Don't offend your electric guitar player by like, I took this, I took that, I took this out, it's a compression. They're like, are you kidding me? There's $1,000 I'm stepping on right here. Like, don't mess with, stay out of their way. Like, so we started to build, an acoustic, sorry. And here we go. That's a great guitar. That sounds amazing. Is that a J45? Is that what that is?
No, it's a Fender PM1, but
great.
Sounds a lot like a
Okay.
J45.
Okay. What do we need out of guitar? We don't need any of this. There we go. I don't need any of that because I have the rest of the band. If it was just him and a guitar and a keys player, I'd leave that in. I'm scooping pretty heavy out of the guitar. You might not want to do that, or you might want to be ready to open it back up for the just guitar moments, depending on your culture. I'm usually scooping just because I'm trying to get rid of some of that energy. But I want the rhythmicness of it. I want the chugga part, but the pretty part of it, not just like the part that whatever. I'll scoop some mid just to make it happy. Happy EQs look happy, but no, I'll scoop some mid just to give it a little bit of space for vocals. I'm not doing a ton. I didn't set up an instrument verb or a drum verb. But in this setting, if you have 4 effects units to work with, and that's usually the minimum, like the PreSonus stuff only has 4 slots. Behringer, I think, has 8 slots. You're probably burning some of those slots with a graphic to tune your PA or monitors or whatever. If you're stuck to 4 or 3, vocal verb, vocal delay, a drum verb only if you can handle it. Just a little bit, and you're not writing a return, just let it be part of the drums VCA. And then a general verb or an instrument verb, INST, GEN, whatever you want to call it. That's where you're going to throw your acoustic a little bit. Not your keys, because that's probably built into the keyboard. You're not going to electric, they have a pedal for it, and they'll tell you how much they spent on that pedal.
They will.
A little bit of acoustic guitar. If you have the ability to do it as a channel insert, like if you have the ability to say, oh, I'm gonna run this effect unit as an acoustic guitar channel, then do it. Like, just bake it into the channel and let it go and let it do its thing. Dry, wet, maybe 25%. Find where you're happy. You can still hear it, and it doesn't sound like you put it in a David Bowie album. It just sounds, it's here, it's just nicer. I'm not going to do that because I'd have to route it, whatever, but it's just nicer. Same thing with drums. If your snare is like, you've gone too far. Used to work with a guy, he loved his drum verb. The drums just sounded like they were forever away. Verb on the snare a little bit, nothing on the kick, high overhead mics. Mix it in on the overhead mics, because you're taking that picture of the kit, not the close mics, but the picture of the kit, and you're pushing it out into the stratosphere. Again, once you hear the effect return louder than the source, turn back, you've gone too far. It is fun to play around with it, right? Just find where the taste of it is. If you have other drummers, get them in the room. Hey, what do you think of this? Use other people's ears. Let the console sit and take a walk, especially if you're not in ideal mix position. We're up against the wall here, and the subs are sounding different on the floor than they are up against the concrete block wall. Take a walk. Make sure all the seats, all the zones of your space sound good. Take the solo off. And then once you're into it, sit on your VCAs. Eight fingers, 8 faders. Ride your vocal, ride your guitar.
Lord, I pray it's worship. Empty words I can't afford. I'm not chasing feelings.
No, there's no tracks in the
That's
song.
not why I'm singing. You're the reason for my song.
If I had more time, we'd have some verb on the instruments and stuff.
I only wanna sing if I sing with everything.
But if you can ride the effects fader on those big phrases, like take the time to really dive in, you know what I mean? Like, and then pull it back. Because you're not taking all that effect return and writing it. You're just writing the amount that you're pushing in. So it's like it's almost like you're at like a slot machine or something. You're just giving, or whatever, you're just giving a little bit more just because that's the moment where it's going to be lucky or whatever. It's a terrible analogy. I don't even know how that works. Anyway. But that's your moment, right? Ride that moment, right? I don't know why I did that. You're going to watch me gambling. Just take it. Just let it ride. You know what I mean? Find out where too far is in sound check so that you don't do it. And this is the last thing. You got to where you like to be with your mix. You've got in a good spot. As long as your vocalists are using in-ears or relying on monitors and the PA doesn't make a difference, let them know, hey, you're going to hear this house on and off through sound check. Just listen to your ears, listen to whatever, as long as they're not relying on that. This is something that I got from a close friend, business partner, a guy who's mixing the sessions, Nate Rivera. And I love this philosophy. Destroy your mix in sound check. Don't change gains or compression, obviously, once they're set, because that'll mess with their ears unless you're on a split console. Destroy your mix.
Jesus, it's all about you. You don't want perfection.
You hear how much is coming through those? How much drums are coming through that? They're in a cage. If they're not, that's all cymbals. We gotta cut it out somehow, right?
More than song. More than a song that lasts a moment. I live a life of honest worship. If I'm made to sing, then I'll sing with purpose. All the praise, Lord, you deserve it. I only wanna sing. If I sing with everything, if I sing for you, my King. Oh, and
I did that blind because I felt like I knew where the fader should be. I pushed it in until I felt like it sounded too much, and it was well below where I thought the fader should be visually. Just do it blind, like mess around with it. Have someone else mess around. Go into the room and have someone who doesn't know what they're doing say, this is the effects fader. Slowly push this up until I put my hand up. Go into the middle of the room during the vocal session, whatever, and then come back. It's like when you're teaching people how to drive, you cover the speedometer, and then you're like, hey, what does this feel like? Oh, it feels like 50. We're actually going 80, so you need to slow down, right? Same thing. Like, we're biased visually. Use your ears, not your eyes. And I think we're over time. Oh yeah, we're over time, big time. We're going to lunch next, right? So okay, we'll get our sandwiches. The last thing is come prepared. All this technical knowledge is great. Obviously, more lead time with the drummer, vocalist, all that's great. But if you don't know what you're mixing, then you're gonna just be chasing, the song the whole time. That'd be like, the guitar player knowing how to solo but not knowing where the solos were or whatever. You'll be chasing it the whole time. So come prepared. Know the people you're mixing. Develop a relationship with them. You're not just part of the tech team. You're part of the worship team. And actually, if you build trust and relationship, you're walking on stage when they arrive, you're shaking hands, you're asking how they're doing, you're getting meals with them on a regular basis, you're part of the culture, you're praying with them before service. You're developing that relationship, you're developing that trust. I love the moments in conferences and church where I have been able to speak into, hey, that song is really great, but if you looped the intro before the guitar came in, you would have an opportunity to say something to set it up. And then the leader takes that, they chew on it for a week, they internalize it, and then they implement it. Because they're on stage, they have their perspective, they have their loop in their ear and their guide voice and MD telling them what to do, they have this, they have that. But if you get engaged in the process and say, you know what I noticed? We always kick in on a guitar solo intro song and you try to talk over it. What if you gave your welcome in the down moment before the bridge? What if you don't say hello, good mornings, come stand with us, church? What if you went through the first chorus of the song, and when it all comes down before the bridge, you built it into the loop, 2 more loops before it builds back up, and that's the moment where they say, well, hey, welcome to church. We're so glad you're here. Now we've proved our salt as a song, as a band, whatever. Okay, if you're not already standing, come on, engage with us, whatever. We've done that recipe every conference that we've been part of in the last 4 years, and we found it to be really successful. But I couldn't do that without conversations and relationship and coffee and all of that. So know what you're mixing, know who you're mixing, know where the moments are. And then, like I said earlier, we're not just techs, we're also therapists. Tell them when it's good. That sounded like, I saw Bruce, I saw Andrew, I saw Dan, all great friends. I walked in last night, Nate was there mixing. The first words out of my mouth, and it was true, I'm not gonna say if it's not true, first word out of my mouth, sounds great. Hey man, really great to see you. Drum sounded great. I love what you're doing. I loved specifics. I texted Leah last night, man, the end of What a Beautiful Name. I want to find that moment. Maybe we can, I don't know. That was really good too. Throwbacks, right? there's more in that. I texted her 2 specific things. By the end of the song, every hand was up and everyone forgot about the mistake in the first verse. I validated what she did right. I also said, yeah, no, I noticed it, but here's the deal. It wasn't a big deal. Because by the end of the song, what you were doing, the anointing was so clear, every hand was up. We have a friendship, we have a relationship. If I didn't know her, I can't text her that. I can't say, yeah, I noticed you messed up, we all did. I can't do that. If I don't have a friendship with her, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Because I have a friendship with her, I can say, hey, that was really, like the redemption of the end of that song so far surpassed the little flub in the beginning, right? Develop those relationships. Find community with your band because you're part of it. Yeah, I think that's all I got. I hope this was helpful. I really do. Thanks for sticking with us over time. If you have any questions, find me on social media. Mark Gettis, thanks for coming. Oh, and I'm super pumped for that 3rd session. It's going to be awesome.
Thanks,
Gonna
Mark.
be
That was awesome.
Go get some chicken.